Welcome to the Spirit RX podcast, Ancient Wisdom, Modern Healing. In this place, two healers come together, each walking a different path, yet bound by a common purpose. Dr. Luke, a quantum chiropractor, and Dr. Hummel, a naturopathic doctor. These two practitioners have dedicated themselves to a vital quest to unite the timeless remedies passed down through the ages with the powerful discoveries of modern medical science. For they understand what many have forgotten, that true healing honors both tradition and innovation. Should you wish to learn more of their stories, their practices, or how to walk this path with them, you will find that knowledge in the link below. And now, let the healing wisdom begin.
Hello, and welcome to this edition of Spirit RX Podcast, Ancient Wisdom, Modern Healing. Today, we have a really special, incredible guest with us.
We do.
Tell us a little more.
Yeah, this is Dr. Jacqueline Woodrum. She's located currently in the Denver area. She is training new doctors. Once upon a time, you were the Colorado Physician of the Year, and we're super glad to have you here. And why don't you just introduce yourself, and then we'll jump in.
Well,
You want to say more about yourself than that?
No, usually like to fly incognito.
That is the truth from most doctors.
That's right.
That's the truth.
Tell us about your story and the field of medicine.
When I was very little and people asked me what I wanted to do when I grew up, I said I wanted to be a turtle doctor. And I discovered pretty quickly that probably wasn't a thing. So I just I'm like, they're like, you want to be a vet?
It's a
like,
niche.
No, just turtles. That's all I want. So I decided that the field of medicine would be good because you could have respect from your community, you wouldn't worry about money, and it would be intellectually stimulating. So the last thing is true. The other two have gone by the wayside. But medicine is good, and I've been doing it since 1997. But the more I do, the more I realize how much more there is that I'm not already aware of. So I'm family medicine. I do pediatrics, geriatrics, occupational medicine, Indian health services, military, functional medicine, like not everything, but a lot. And truly, the longer I do this, the more I realize, oh, there's a lot out there that I didn't know about and I keep learning about. And I like to have patients that I can send in the proper direction.
All right. Love that.
That's awesome. We're alternative, esoteric-minded podcast. And what I want to emphasize in our subject today is that we're talking about this, but we're not pigeonholing anyone within this realm that we're speaking of. It's just opinions and conversations around something that might be a little deeper than just our physical reality. So today we are talking about the use of intuition in medical practice, which I think is a really cool topic and something I understand that you are very attuned to. So I'm excited to hear more. So ultimately, we think of medicine as like a science and an art as a whole. And so, in your opinion, where does intuition fit on that spectrum?
You have to have an open mind and a healthy dose of skepticism at the same time, and then blend those two things together. When I was training, the senior physicians would say that they had a gut instinct about things. And they didn't really know how to teach us that. They said it comes with time. But now I realize what they were referring to is like your intuitive or your psychic or your perceptive abilities as they pertain to medicine. That's really what it is.
Cool. Okay. How about this? Every superhero has an origin story. Can you take us back to a specific case, perhaps early in your career, where you first felt that distinct gut feeling that you were mentioning, or I call it the medical Spidey sense, a hunch that went against the initial data or the obvious diagnosis? So what happened and how did that shape your use of intuition moving forward?
There was something that happened early on in my private office, and I had a young individual who had some heartburn symptoms, a hiatal hernia, needed to have a little procedure done. And he was an excellent candidate for a laparoscopic surgery. So I sent him to the best surgeon that I know, who I would go to myself if I needed a procedure. He went, he had the procedure done, he followed the straight protocol. He went home after 24 hours, 3 days later, dead. And I was like, what happened? What happened? His name was Kyle, and Kyle would come to my house. And he smelled like stinky, rotten chicken to get my attention. And I kept
From
thinking,
the other
what? From the other side, yeah.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
like,
okay.
what is happening? What is this yucky smell? Why doesn't
Stinky
anybody in
Kyle.
the house,
Okay.
right,
Oh my
notice this?
God.
So he would talk to me and he would keep going like this. And essentially, what happened was he was a little heavy set. Now we know that anesthesia goes into the fat cells and will sit there for 3 days and slowly be released. So people who are overweight and have a surgical procedure need to stay in the hospital longer than what was traditionally the norm at that time, to make sure that during the night when the anesthesia came out, closed off his airway and he died. So he's telling me all of this. And he wanted me to tell his parents. I was like, I can't tell your parents this. His parents were also my patients. And I was like, I am not going to be a wackadoodle. I am not going to say that somebody's come to visit me. So who comes to my office the next week? His mother, for a routine thing. And I found a way to work it into conversation and told her, oh, Kyle came to see me. And she was like, oh, of course, he's been to see me too. What did he tell you? So she sent me in a direction to fine tune these intuitive skills, right? Because we're all born with it, the ability to communicate with our guides and our angels and talk to plants and animals and whatever it happens to be, but we turn it off when we're children because it doesn't seem to be what the adults are validating us for. So we think we're wrong and we turn it off. And so two things happened out of that. One is it got me to start taking some classes to turn it back on again so I could properly hear and sense and trust what I was sensing. But also, I ended up having a conversation with an anesthesiologist, not necessarily the one that Kyle had, but telling him what was happening with these patients who were heavy set and had anesthesia. And he said, oh, we know. We're already working to try to change formally the guidelines within anesthesiology so that, because we're aware, we've been hearing about this. And so I was like, good. So that was probably the first big thing that made me get out of my comfort zone and turn back up the intuitive skills.
Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. I can imagine that there would be this tension going on between, I want to share this and let it inform some positive things, but yet people might think out there, I might lose respect or credibility in the field. And so, how are you with all of that now?
At the time, it was a very delicate balance, right? Because in the field of medicine, you must blend in to the professional standards that are held out there. And part of that is speaking a certain way and being super professional. And so it was always a little tricky, like, how do I say something and not come across as a crazy person or a wackadoodle? So I just figured out how to use my intuition to what can I say and how can I phrase it in a way that the person can hear what I have to say, right? And then sometimes what happens is I'll ask myself, let's say I need to say something, but I'm not sure if the individual in front of me is going to be receptive to the information. So I will just ask myself some quick yes or no questions. Is it in their highest good if I give them this information? Usually it's always yes. Then the next question is, are they ready to hear it? Right? Sometimes the answer is no. And Then I'll take it a step further and I'll say, if I tell them anyway, because I really want to tell them, if I tell them anyway, are they going to energetically whack me for it? And if the answer is yes, then I won't say it. But I finally got smart. I'm like, ooh, I delegate. So it's taken me a long time, but I'm like, okay, now I have a whole team. I just ask my guardian angels or my guides. I'm like, you guys go talk to that person's guides, and then their guides can talk to the individual in the time frame that they're ready to have the information. So it's a game of telephone, but I'm like, I gave the message, you deliver it in whatever time frame is appropriate, and then I'm done.
That's cool. How about, let's say, how would you use your intuition if a new person shows up, a new patient, and they're giving you a whole gamut of their issues? And of course, the older
Yeah.
they are, it seems like the more they want to share all those issues. But like, how do you use your intuition and these
Yeah.
extra abilities to help you with that?
So this happens frequently. Someone will come in and they will have a long laundry list of problems and then also give lots of things they've tried, what didn't work, and maybe even some like self-placed roadblocks as to why it didn't work. So the first thing I always ask myself is, does this person really want to get better?
Mm.
And if the answer is yes, then I proceed. If the answer is no, then I just already know that I don't need to spend a lot of my energy on this, because no matter what I do or say or what direction I send them, they're married to their problem. It's become their identity. If you have to choose between your logical brain, what it's telling you to do, and what your gut instinct tells you, the instinctive part is always correct. And you should always listen to that instead of talking yourself into in or out of something else.
Yeah, I remember that even from the schooling years. It was always like, hey, just go with the first question that comes to your mind as the answer. And that tended to be more correct than others. So, interestingly enough, I think a lot of people think of intuition as something mystical. And I think there's a mystical side to what we're talking about here, especially the spiritual, like
Right.
paranormal sort of connection, which is really cool. And I think anyone who deals with the loss of a patient and has an open heart and open mind will often experience some sort of connection to that person beyond this realm or within this realm, however you think of it. But I guess where I would go with this is, so we think of it as maybe like a sixth sense. And do you think of intuition as tapping into your subconscious in some way? Do you want to expand on how you see intuition integrating with the
Yeah, where are
mind?
you getting the information from?
Initially, when it came, I didn't know where it was coming from. You'd have this thought, and you're like, what, that doesn't sound like my thought. Where did I get that? And it makes no logical sense. Let me give you a simple example. Let's say you're loading up the trunk of your car, right? You're putting a bunch of stuff in there because you're going somewhere. So lots of bags of this, that, and the other. And a little voice says, that bag with something in there is probably going to fall over and tip, right? So maybe you should move things around a little bit more to stabilize it. And if you're in a hurry, you might ignore it and go, oh no, my driving's fine. It'll be just fine. And then you get to your destination, and sure enough, that item that was, it did fall over and it did
Yeah.
spill all over the back. And if you had just listened to yourself, then it would have saved you a lot of hassle. So if you start to listen to that little voice, then you're utilizing your perceptive skills or your intuition. And is it your thought? Is it your guardian angel's thought? I don't know. It doesn't matter. If somebody's giving you information, you might want to listen to it.
Okay.
I love that.
Can you discuss maybe some of the inherent dangers of intuition? Like, how do you guard against personal bias or what have you?
There are many dangers to it if you're not careful. When I first turned it back on and turned it open, wide open, that was not a good thing, because it's almost like in the dark, you've turned on a flashlight, right? You are the flashlight. Now, every entity that is out there is going to come and see you. So you have to learn how to have really good boundaries and how to turn it on and turn it back off. In the beginning, it was like a parade route of yahoos coming through my bedroom in the middle of the night, waking me up with all of these different senses or whatever's. And I was like, this is not okay with me. I need to sleep. So again, you learn how to set your boundaries so that you don't have entities that want to jump in and out of your body, because that's definitely a no-no, right? Or just come and bother you all the time. Some people will hear things. Some people see things. Other people will just know. It's like your knowingness, you sense it. Some people will feel physically the emotions that another individual is having. There are different ways that people can be intuitive, right? It's not the same for everybody. I remember one day I had picked up my children from school, and we were still in the parking lot driving slowly, waiting to exit, right? It's middle school. And I drove by this mother who I knew, and she looked sad. And I just thought, oh, that's interesting. She does look very sad. And then within 2 minutes, my son said, Mom, why are you crying? And I said, I'm not crying. I'm not making any noise. He goes, I hear you. You're crying. And I was like, oh, that's the lady that we passed. You're picking up on her emotions and hearing what was feeling. He used to not be able to focus on his homework because he would be feeling and hearing every child in the classroom, and he couldn't do his test, right? Because he could hear their thoughts and he could feel their emotions. And so when I figured this out, I was like, okay, let's just learn how to turn it off, right? You need to turn it on when you want it to be on and turn it off when you don't want to utilize this tool, right? So I said, imagine that it's a radio with a knob that you can turn all the way off, or you can turn it on and turn the volume up, right? We practice. I said, just turn it, hear it click off, it's off. You can turn it on whenever you want, right? But you have to figure out when are you going to utilize these tools and when are you not? Otherwise, you're bombarded. I've come across people before who are skilled in different manners, and they like getting messages from the other side, but then they don't want to have boundaries and turn it off. And that creates like physical issues for them, and then maybe eventually some like behavioral, emotional, mental health issues for them. So you've got to have super good boundaries. And again, I'm so slow on the uptake with this stuff, but I was like, oh, let me just delegate this, right? So now I have one guide who's my gatekeeper, right? Kind of like your receptionist. And I'm like, okay, anybody that wants to come and give a message, they don't get to come to me directly. They go to my guide. My guide will filter out all of those things. And then if it's for me, only he will bring it to me. So I'm like, oh, good. I don't have to be bombarded with all these other energies.
Yeah, I like that because if you leave your porch light on at night, things
Yes,
that are attracted to light are going to be flying around and bumping into it. So if
yes,
you don't like that, then turn them off.
yep, yeah.
Well, I
Everything
love,
has a pro and a con, right? Everything can be useful or detrimental. You just have to know how to use it. If you've got a skill saw and you don't know how to use it properly, you're going to hurt yourself. You just need to be aware if you're going to turn on your intuitive skills.
this makes me, I'm a storyteller. So like this just makes my brain jump to a story. So when I was a student in chiropractic school, students want to get practice. And a friend of mine went on this trip to another country that where there were many poor people, and they were giving free chiropractic adjustments, now very traditional adjustments, line of chairs, villagers would come in and have a seat, and they would just make one adjustment on them on the top of their neck. And what my friend said was that a couple of times he got freaked out. And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "I would set up and make an adjustment on someone in the chair in front of me, and then someone two chairs over would get the same adjustment at the same time." And he said, "I don't know what that's about. I can't understand that." And my response to him was that part of human beings is that we're wired to be in tribe. And if you imagine, like in the rainforest, there's a group of men that go hunting every day. And all of a sudden, when they're about to go after their prey, they're silent, but they have to communicate. And so they have to communicate without words, without even moving their body. So we all have these abilities that have served humanity well, but we've lost some of that. And so people that live very closely together, they're more in sync than others. So sometimes we think of these as some kind of strange gifts, but they're actually available to all of us. So anyway, that's another story to throw in the hopper that kind of might shed a little more information on this topic.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that comes to mind as I'm thinking through the connected nature of all of us
Right.
is that sometimes our patients come in like intuitively guided in their own problem. And so I guess my question is, has there ever been times where you have found your intuition about a patient has conflicted with their intuition about themselves? Or have you ever found that they generally are in harmony and or listen to theirs over your own? I'm curious about your thoughts in that regard.
Yeah, frequently it will happen, especially if it's a new patient that you don't already have an established relationship with. And they may come in and say, I want this. I know my body and I need this, right? And it makes you want to roll your eyes. You're like, okay, hold on now. I'm not your vending machine. I think the key first is you need to have a very strong relationship with that person. You need to know their personality style, who is stoic, who's a complainer, who's not, what's their family dynamics. You need to factor all of those things in. And so if it's a patient that I know and something is amiss, then I really take that seriously. If they say, I just don't feel right, and I know that they're not a dramatic individual, then I definitely hone in on that and try to figure out what isn't right. Now, what should we check to figure out what is going on with them? But it has to be individualized because not every person that comes in saying, I need blah, blah, because I know that is accurate. Sometimes they just want what they want. So the way I look at it is if you had a 3-year-old who walked through the kitchen and saw a butcher knife on the counter and they said, I want that. You're not going to give it to them because they will hurt themselves. And it doesn't matter how much of a meltdown they have and they cry and they scream and blah, blah, blah. You're not going to give it to them if it's going to cause them harm. And so that's how I look at everybody. It doesn't matter if you're telling me you want something, I understand you want it, but if I'm not sure that it's going to be good for you, then I don't have to go along with it, right? So the bottom line is I use my own instincts as the final decision in what I'm doing with patients. And sometimes it's not somebody that I can help, right? So maybe they need to see a psychic surgeon. They need drumming. They need acupuncture. They need something different. They need energy work. And great. I just need to know who's going to be responsive to different modalities. And then who am I going to refer them to that will best help them with what they need?
Yeah, I think that shows a level of like individual integrity, in terms of what you understand and how you feel good ethically in terms of how you're treating people. But it also shows an openness to
Right.
hearing what, the patient's saying and like how they feel about things. It doesn't need to necessarily mean that you're just going to agree with everyone.
Right.
And I think that's a really beautiful thought and something should be emphasized a lot in medicine. So
Right. Medical school is very rigorously teaches algorithms or the flow chart. Here are some symptoms. Let's work the chart. Let's follow it until we can come up with the diagnosis, the alternate diagnosis, and then here's the treatment, the standard treatment plan. However, intuition is a skill that we also want to impart to students. And now you're in a prime position where you get to have some impact and influence on next generation of people in medicine. So tell me, how do you do that? How do you balance that out? How do you structure that in a way that is very successful for the individual long term?
Yeah, it's easier than you would think. About this time last year, I was volunteering in Paraguay, and I was working with a bunch of medical students that were local to that particular hospital. And some of them didn't speak English, and my Spanish is not very good, but I discovered that they were super receptive to using your intuition. So especially if you're in an area where maybe resources are not readily available, or the population can't afford expensive things. So I just started teaching. I had a dozen of them. And I would say, okay, let's make this super, super easy. I said, first of all, and I made this up. I said, if your eyes are open, your brain is on. Close your eyes, it turns your brain off. Close your eyes, right? It's not really true. You can do it with your eyes open, but it's just what I told them. Close your eyes. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, right? And I make it simple, right? Yes or no. So for this particular individual, do you think the etiology is this? Yes or no? Don't open your eyes, don't say anything, nod your head. And no matter what question I would ask them, they all got it in unison. They got the same exact answer. And so then I just learned keep it simple, yes or no, a variety of questions. And I was like, oh, interesting. So I realized that me as one individual, I could see during the 3 days, maybe I could see 60 people, but I'm teaching them how to use these skills. Each of them are going to see thousands and thousands of people. So I was like, oh, yes, this is great. So now I teach here in the United States, and I do the exact same thing with my students. Whenever there's an opportunity and something comes up, I will make it a yes or no question. And it could be something we saw in media. It can be something that we saw that relates to medicine. But I'm just like, okay, team, everybody close your eyes. Here's what you think. So let's say there was a physician who maybe was doing some unethical things, right? And the student said, I wonder if he believes that he's giving them the right thing. I said, okay, let's look at this question. Close your eyes. Does this person believe that he is helping that individual? And they would all nod their heads in a certain way. I'm like, uh-huh, okay. So it's very easy to teach. You just have to give permission to the students to use their intuition, right? And I always tell them there's not a right or wrong answer. Close your eyes. So they don't know what their neighbor is doing. They just know what they're doing. And their answers, the way they nod their heads, are always the same.
Pretty
I
cool.
know.
Now we have artificial intelligence entering the scene in a big
Yeah.
way, and that can really help guide maybe that algorithm section, but it might also make a doctor lazier. And so then there might need to be a little more leaning into the intuition as a double check for that. How do you address that in your teaching?
Yeah, so you bring up a very interesting point because AI will eventually be a key tool in medicine. It is not there yet, right? It is completely in infancy stages, and what the information we're getting from that is not accurate. I think we tell the students that at this point, they're not allowed to use AI or to copy and paste anything from an outside source. It's if you're teaching a child math, you don't hand them the calculator. They need to know how to do addition and subtraction first, and then once they've got that mastered, then they can use a calculator to make it go faster. So eventually they will be able to use AI, but AI is programmed by people. It is never going to be as good as the human brain. If you're looking at just quick data compiling information that is factual, then AI couldn't be a great tool. But AI can't factor in what are all the social determinants and the relationships that are going along with this patient. The AI doesn't have intuitive or perceptive skills. And that's where your physician would come into play.
Yeah, I have a little bit of a weird viewpoint on this. So I'm just going to share it. So I think that artificial intelligence, where it is now, and in terms of the artificiality of it, is very much at its infancy, and exactly like what you said. It has not advanced to its potential. And I think what's coming is because I've actually dived into this really deeply and had lots of conversations with experts in this field, and have also watched many experts and their opinions on it. And I think what we're going to see happen, and this is my side of it, a lot of people out there are very afraid of what AI is doing. They're afraid of the economic disruption, the things that are coming down the road. But I really think that once we get to this artificial general intelligence and it's training itself and it's expanding its understanding of the world, right, of reality, I think we're going to see things like what you experience and like what others out there who have this spiritual, paranormal connection to reality
Right.
that I think we all do, but some are very close to it compared to others. And I think what we're going to see is as the sensory capabilities of AI are advanced. So this is where I say this. You imagine you have a single node, and then that node expands beyond to where it can pick up x-rays, it can pick up stuff we can't see, really understand from a sensory standpoint, but maybe intuitively pick it up. And so you imagine this system that is beyond our comprehension in terms of level of complexity and understanding, and has all of those data points. I see that system actually expanding our understanding of the spiritual realm, of the intuitive side of humanity. But that's just a
That's
very
maybe a
esoteric.
longer term, although it may come faster than we think. I think like in the East, there was more of an idea, let's say like Ayurveda and diet. There's these different body types and they all need different diets. Okay, in the West, we tend to be like, oh, this is the diet everyone needs right now. And then we wonder why not everyone has success with that. So to me, like AI at the moment is doing it for everybody. And it's very general and it's not always going to be specific. And that's where the intuition and the skill of the doctor, the critical thinking of the individual needs to blend with it to get the best. Maybe one day down the road, the artificial intelligence will be able to do more of that. But I think that's part of being human that maybe I like to believe that's never going to go away. There's always going to be a need for a doctor, a human being somewhere in the equation.
Yeah, I think at the core of it, what I'm really trying to say is that can artificial intelligence expand to the point of an actual consciousness? That's really the core of it.
Right.
Can it? And that's very divisive to think about.
Well,
So
it's very developed.
Dr. Hummel, when you were talking about this, I had a thought and I was like, I can see a huge use for AI to free up my brain power so I can focus on other things. Like right now, I can look at someone who I don't know and I can look in their eyes. I can see what emotions do they have, perhaps what happened to them in the past that led up to that. And then I intuitively know, oh, what do they need? What do you need? What can I give you? But if I now, as a medical physician, can shorten up all of that technology part that I need to do using AI, now I have all of this extra energy and time to be more perceptive. I think it's not a new skill, it's a very ancient old skill that we just have ignored. And like, why not bring it back to the forefront and start putting it into everything that we do? Just like you said, what kind of diet and nutrition or exercise do you need? When you're seeing a patient on the table, right, you don't treat them all exactly the same. You individualize it a little bit according to them. So if we could incorporate AI to do some of our busy work, then we could use more of our intuitive skills to help patients.
I love that.
I love that too.
Yeah, I think we should.
Well, okay, how about this? Let's say a patient is looking for a new doctor and they're like, you know what? Yeah, I want a good doctor, but I really want a doctor who has a lot of intuition, or there's even the phrase medical medium going around, and that may or may not be a physician. Anyway, but if a patient's like thinking about all this, what kind of advice would you give them in their search?
Mhm. Doctors are hard to find right now. We're short in the United States just in primary care. We're short 25,000 physicians. There's a whole lot of reasons for that. But I would say first start word of mouth. Do you have a friend or neighbor who's seen someone that they really say is a great physician? Then once you go, you've got to judge this. Is the individual making eye contact with you? Are they listening to you? Are they just giving you pills or are they offering you more services? Typically, you've got to be a little older, a little more seasoned as a physician before you're using your gut instinct, right? So if you could choose between a brand new physician and a seasoned physician, you might go with the older one. That's a luxury that maybe we don't have, is to choose between them. I would say be aware that most of the individuals that say that they're medical intuitives are not physicians. And knowing the doctor world and how everybody wants to seem professional, you're probably not going to get a physician who's brave enough to say, "Oh yeah, I'm intuitive," because that shines sometimes light on us that we don't want. So if someone says they're a medical intuitive, look into their background to see who is this. Even when I was trying to research functional medicine before I assisted in that kind of office, I did a lot of research and I found that the majority of offices, they were not physicians at all. Sometimes they were chiropractors. That would be very good. A lot of times they weren't. And it's almost like if there's a vogue term, people are going to use it for branding and they're going to hang it out. And so just be careful, right? Um, Check into whoever it is that you're going to be seeing. But the bottom line is use your gut instinct. If you go into an office and you'll get a feel for how is the staff, how are the patients treated, what did you think of the physician? And if you're going to know they were okay, then they were just okay. But you'll know when you meet the right one for you.
There's also a big movement right now with telemedicine, right? Because it's
Yeah.
cost savings and all of that. I know you've had some experience with that. So tell me on this topic, intuition, telemedicine, all of this, any thoughts on that topic?
I never thought I would do telemedicine. I didn't think it was a good way to do healthcare. When COVID hit and we weren't able to see patients face to face, then I did do it. And I'm not the biggest fan. If they're your patients and you know them and you have a relationship, that's a totally different scenario. But having a brand new person who only wants to talk to me on the phone or through telehealth, it doesn't work out very well. You need to be able to see the person, hear the person, touch the person, right? In order to truly help them. And if you're doing it by telehealth, you're getting rid of a critical element in judging what is going on with that patient.
You know, something you said that really resonated with me about the experience aspect of things. And I think that it's important to recognize that not everyone can go to the most experienced physician. Otherwise, the less experienced physicians would never become experienced. So that's definitely something we have to emphasize. But I just want to point this out because I think it's important. So yesterday evening, we had the opportunity, my wife and I, to sit down with a physician here locally. He's an MD, really great guy, but he's been in practice for 40 years.
Right.
And then across from me was his wife, who is a DO. And so he's an MD, she's a DO, and she's been in practice for a very long time too. And here I am, the naturopath, and I've been in practice for 10 years. And I'm feeling like, hey, I got experience. And these guys, man, they knew so much. They were blowing my mind, like just throwing out all this information. The only thing I thought while I was sitting there is I needed a chiropractor right here. I needed Dr.
Yeah.
Luke in this group so
Balance
we
it
could all
out.
talk about things. But
But there's also someone who's maybe been doing it a long time. They may not be as leaning into the newest, latest stuff either.
yeah,
So
interesting.
it's like somebody who's in the middle. They've got some seasoning under their belt, but they're still hungry and trying to keep up with what's current. All these are great topics for people to think about. I love this topic of using your intuition to help guide what you do in your interactions with patients. And of course, we could apply it to across the board to how we live our life. We should be developing these skills that we have. I know, especially with children, I spend a lot of time in education. We really have to keep fostering that imagination in children and have them keep that alive as long as possible. But there's great things coming down the way with artificial intelligence and the like, with technology, but it's not the answer to everything. And we still need to keep that human component. There's something about being a human being that is just more amazing than even a computer that's smarter than you.
Yeah. It'll never
Anyway,
be us, is the way to
yeah,
think of it. It can't.
Dr. Woodrum, do you have any like closing thoughts or stories or anything that you want to leave the audience with?
I would say for any individual, they need to be careful not to give their seniority over to another person, right? To think somebody else knows so much more than that they will just blindly follow. And the same thing goes whether it's your neighbor who's telling you something and you just say, "Oh yeah, that's how I should do that," and you're not thinking for yourself, or you letting technology do that for you. Each one of us have a unique set of skills and intuition and perceptions, and sometimes you just need to think for yourself, trust your own gut instinct.
Yeah,
And
don't give
then
your power away.
and then when in doubt, go to an expert and ask their opinion and then see, does
Get a
it
second
sound right?
opinion, right? Yeah, I like that. We like to say that in medicine all the time. Dr. Woodrum, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you today. I really appreciate your time. I greatly appreciate your willingness to be open and transparent on this topic that can make people who want to be very professional maybe feel a little uncomfortable. But there's so much power in that to share that with the next generation. And I applaud you for that stance and wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It has been a pleasure.